A character gets gang raped.
Nice.
How about Paul Inwardhoven?
Okay.
Yep.
Let's go.
I think I could see some.
Okay.
Yeah, my idea was there's a policeman who is shot, and but he is a white man, and he is shot real bad, but it is some kind of a crazy future. They have medicine and machines, and they build him. It's Detroit, so they rebuild him with parts of just leftover blacks.
Yeah. Paul, I think maybe what if he's a machine instead of?
Yeah. What if he fights crime?
They use black people parts to make him.
Well, they could, what about electronics?
No, and
No?
so
Okay.
part machine, part black guy, part man. So
Okay. So
Okay.
just
They
all part man, part machine.
Yeah,
he's a
part-
black. They turn the policeman into a black man whose head is a boombox,
He's a ghetto blaster.
and he gets back at the criminals by calling them the N-word.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I think you got a lot of good elements here, Paul.
I don't know how you,
Edwardhoven.
how you could fight crime.
Mr. Edwardhoven, I like the part where he's a robot and a
The
man.
name of the movie is called Showgirls. They're like, yeah, actually, Showgirls went through a lot of reviews. The original script, they cannibalized a lot for RoboCop. But
Yeah, his original screenplay that the studio didn't like.
the policeman has to turn into a stripper.
He's got to go to puss them, give him a pussy.
Because he's a robot and a black man, the police department won't pay him. So he has to support his family that doesn't remember him because they think, he's white.
Yeah.
So when a black man with a boombox head shows up at home, the family is scared.
So he has to become a
'Cause they
sexy
thought-
lady.
So he becomes a stripper, and he has his
Vegas.
penis replaced with breasts.
Oh wait, but he has breasts where his penis would be?
Yes. And,
Wow.
and he becomes the most popular stripper in Detroit.
Oh, he's in Detroit. Still in Detroit.
And then he moves to New York to become a beautiful actress.
Okay.
Okay. I love it.
And then
So his head is still a black guy with a boombox.
But then bugs.
But it's
tried
giant bugs.
The bugs tried to kill him,
Yeah.
and he has to go to space.
And then you find out the bugs are the good guys.
And the bugs are actually Jews from the
Yeah.
Holocaust.
But the Jew bugs are actually the good guys.
And
Yeah.
then does he also go to Mars? Was that him too?
Yeah.
And then Mars attacks, and he has to. There's two Jack Nicholsons, and one is the president. And,
What about
I
Sharon
think
Stone,
that's,
his wife? I was talking about Total Recall.
I think Mars Attacks is Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Anyways, a character gets gang raped by 5 guys, and then afterwards, one of the characters is like, "Yeah, we thought you'd like it," and then the next day he is a homosexual.
No, that's what turns him gay.
That's Homo Cop.
He gets gang raped into homosexuality.
Wow, like
Yeah.
it's a gang,
Yeah,
like
but
a woman in the Bloods.
but then he just finds out from the gang rape that he's gay. And
That's awesome. That's a nuanced understanding of homosexuality.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
I bet in the RoboCop remake where they show him what he looks like without the suit or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just a brain, and they've made his dick huge, and that's all that's left.
And he's like,
And he's just like, hell yeah! And they're like, put the suit back on him.
this fucking rocks.
This rules!
My dick is fucking awesome. Oh hell yeah!
Yes! Fuck yeah!
Yeah, that's good. I like that a lot, actually.
Oh, you kept my original dick.
You made my dick bigger. Thank you so much.
Yeah, they're like, no, actually, we made your dick bigger. And he's like, delete the files. Delete all records.
Delete the records of my penis.
I'm gonna destroy the computer room.
Yeah. RoboCop's gone rogue. He's destroying all the records that say his penis was
It used to be regular sized.
regular size. And he's killed all the scientists.
All the scientists that knew what his penis looked like before are turning up dead. And the movie becomes Stopping
It's
RoboCop.
called RoboCop 2 Showgirls.
Oh hell yeah, dude! Just a thriller where all the scientists didn't know what his thing looked like. They keep dying. Anyone that's seen his penis, like his old high school coach,
He kills his wife.
he kills his wife, he kills his doctors. He's like interrogating his fucking kid. He's like, did you ever see my penis in the shower? You're not allowed to see it.
He sounds like, why are you talking like Batman?
He's like, I'm also Batman. I'm also Batman now. I decided when I moved to New York to be a beautiful actress, so to became Batman. He pulls his dick out. He's like, look, what's up? Is this what it always was? Yes, Dad. Rachel! Look at my dick!
Well, you see, Robo-Batman cop show girls, I know your penis used to be small. No matter what you do, you can't fuck me. Look, you'll never fuck my ass, Batman.
The Joker had his asshole, so he shut.
There's nothing you can threaten me with.
Unsew your asshole! Take it up! Open up your ass!
Now you have a choice. By the time it takes you to unstitch my asshole, Rachel will be dead. You can either go fuck Rachel and save her, or fuck me in my ass.
Harvey! Go save Rachel, but you're not allowed to fuck her!
Well, if I save her, I'm gonna fuck her.
No!
And somehow this proves your dick was regular.
It was him just fucking the Joker in the ass while Harvey Dent's eating Rachel's pussy. And Batman's on the phone, he can hear her coming, and he's like, no!
No! Rachel! Rachel!
Yeah. I hope you enjoy my ass, Batman. Because now you're gay. And Rachel's... and my broadcast you fucking me in the ass on the news. Gotham shocked to find out that beautiful actress Robo-Batman is actually gay for the Joker. In other news, Assistant DA Rachel got her pussy eaten last night in an abandoned factory by Harvey Dent.
He did a really good job.
Yeah, he ate her pussy
Being
very well.
straight, he ate it very well.
Yeah, like cell phone video. Where he got fucking Joker in the ass when he laughed.
Rachel! No!
It's on speakerphone.
You're gay now.
Yeah. Now you're gay!
You've fallen into my
You're
trap.
falling into my trap, Batman.
Now you're gay.
Yeah.
The whole point.
Oh, man.
I can't believe I've done this to you,
Just
Master
made
Wayne.
you gay, Master Wayne.
Bruce Wayne's like, I stopped being Batman in 6 years.
He's like, no, it's from
This is
the
some good-
Verhoeven movie.
Yeah, this is some guy from Detroit. I'm in an alternate universe now where I'm in high school. Where I'm a guy in high school that's goth, and I just solve crimes around the school, not Batman anymore. I'm for teenagers. Oh, that's right, Master Wayne.
That's right. Well, I guess I'll go kill that homo. Alfred's also homophobic.
Oh, wow.
So
When I
he's
was
hunting
in
him.
when I was in Burma, there was a 6-year-old boy that we were all taking turns with.
Alfred, where's this story going?
We found the rubies in his eyes. What I'm saying is, it might seem wrong to rape a child at first, but when you find out that they were actually the ruby thief, through the process of fucking them, and around them in sort of a Machiavellian sort of way, is it really?
Was it really wrong?
Yeah, it's still wrong.
It's still fucked up.
It's
weird.
still kind
You're
of
being
fucked
a
up.
pedophile.
You're a pedophile.
You raped a
Alfred.
kid, Alfred.
Yeah, but I'm British.
That's where you got me there.
That's. I guess it's more of a sort of a systemic problem.
Were you wearing a pith helmet while you were doing it? Oh, fuck. Damn, that dastardly Joker strikes again.
Dude, what a
So anyway, that is my idea for
what
the
a master of
movie.
tricks.
That's the idea is that, that's the whole pitch.
We love it, Mr. Edward Hoven.
Oh, that's how
Paul
this
Leonard
started.
And then we are thinking maybe there's a sequel where there's a guy named Bane who is like a Black Lives.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's told.
Sounded okay to me. Fun supposed to be?
I'm Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn, you're more like a Harley Davidson because you're a goddamn hog.
I'm so wasted. I'm so wasted, I might do anything.
I like that.
Oh man, I'm so drunk, but I have to drive home.
Here, drink this. It'll make you drive drunk better.
I love driving drunk good. Thank you. Packed with vitamin C in your natural vitamins, this orange juice makes me go for hours. I've got the juice that I want to let loose inside your caboose. Only a real man drinks Florida natural orange.
Did you just pee inside of me?
That's all juice, baby.
Hey, Sal.
Gabagool, Grandma. It's nothing but fat and nitrates.
Gabagool. Over here. Forward ham, salami, gabagool.
Taking the gabagool and shit out of the fridge.
Let's get back to that gabagool.
Gabagool! All this from a slice of gabagool? The gabagool. Gabagool.
Have you tried the lasagna? It's my favorite.
Mira.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that, Private Pile?
Sir, jelly donuts, sir!
A jelly donut?
Sir, yes, sir!
Ooh, and Rocky Balboa is taking the beating of his life.
I hope you're ringing that bell. I can't concentrate.
It's over, Rock.
Now that it's over, just give me something to drink.
There ain't nothing on ice to say to now.
Let them fresh guys pay, eh?
Except maybe this.
Yeah, hey, oh, sorry, I had to test my mic. Good morning.
Oh, that's rich, baby.
Get in there. Save some of that for the sequel.
Man, I am not gay. I have relationships with women and sex with men.
And I got news for you. That means you're gay.
Thank you, Kitty. Is my mic working? I can't tell. Can you guys hear me? I guess we'll find out in a minute. Oh, shit. Is my mic working? Okay, cool. Thank you, Kitty. I don't know, I can't hear myself on here, but I could see the fucking volume, whatever. Good morning. I feel like I should do that over again. Yeah, so good morning, Wake and Bake. I'm on doing a little test run on YouTube to see how that runs. So I'm multi-streaming on DLive, Twitch, and YouTube right now. So I'm gonna see how that goes and testing out. I'm not using OBS no more. I went and switched to Streamlabs, and it's running a lot smoother. So this is the second week that I'm using Streamlabs. So I'm still working on what, it's like not a whole new thing, but it's different than what I've been using on fucking OBS. So yeah, fun shit. But yeah, like I said, things are starting to open up here. So I'm gonna do these streams maybe 10, 11, 12 the latest, I would say. So let's get into this shit. But first, let's smoke a bowl, take a sip of fucking coffee, settle in, grab your doggo or your cat, whatever you got. And that's why I'm not playing music in the background or any kind of music, because since I'm live on YouTube and even on Twitch, I'll probably get popped for fucking anything, especially with any kind of music. So I'm not trying to immediately get attention on me as soon as I fucking test this thing. So I'm gonna at least try to, give it enough time until I can kind of slide under the radar and maybe, work out some music where it's not copywritten. So we'll see. I don't fucking know. But anyway, today's smoke sponsor is still Pink Panties. Pink Panties, yes. Actually, here, I'll show you on the yeah, there we go. Cool. It was by Ghost. Oh, they don't got it no more. Damn. Yeah, they go fast. This is a good fucking company. Fuck. All right. Well, it's called Pink Panties, but it's not on there no more. Fuck, I might get white cake next time, but open up a nug for you. Fuck, I should have bought like a quarter of that shit. Let's see. Hopefully it focus. I turn autofocus off, but wait. Stank. I know, Doomy Tunes. I should, huh? Good idea, kitty. Good idea. I'll ask them before I even do that, but this is some fucking dank though right here. Yeah, Pink Panties by Ghost Grow. Definitely a company that I recommend if somebody's ever by chance out here. I doubt it, but this is the company that you go through is when I'm home, Sacred Garden. So they got all kinds of goodies, carts, concentrates, edibles, tinctures, CBD products, pre-rolls, which I actually got one of them right here. This bad boy, but these are they're so fucking strong that if I went out, I would have to share this with 3 or 4 people, or else this would last me 3 days. Yeah, 3 days. If I just smoked this by myself, I would have to keep putting it out and shit. Shitty flute is great too. No shit, right? That would annoy people though, because I would have to fill 10 minutes of kind of commercials in a way, or those goofy fucking videos that I just kind of put up there. But actually here, I'll show you the weed herb of 2021. Yes, yeah, I got it right here. There we go. I got this last week. I got a quarter, so I think I smoke a quarter a week right now, which is actually kind of good. But yeah, let's smoke a bowl. Hope you guys are doing good. And There we go. Yeah, I'm looking on Twitch right now and then on DLive, and Twitch gets so much, like, it's just faster reception. I don't know, they're like, their lag behind is like maybe 10, 15 seconds, and it seems like DLive is like 30 to like a fucking minute sometimes. I mean, even better, it's better than OBS, what I was using before, though. So, just low in the background. Let me see what's going on. Yeah, I gotta work out the desktop audio, I think, maybe. Seems like the mic it goes to red. Actually, you know what? There we go. The overlay you see up top actually has sound too and shit, so I have to mute those in the fucking mixer menu. It's weird, I'm learning, but thank you, Kitty, for telling me though. Fuck, let's smoke and let's get into this documentary. Buffalo Bill. Ooh. Lord have mercy. Oh my God. I'm not even. All right, let's just start. Kitty, God damn it. Let's just start the documentary, shall we? Buffalo Bill. Enjoy. Hold on. There we go. I'll have the mute. The mic muted, but I'll talk on and off. So.
She will never forget. Angry after a fight with her boyfriend, she left their apartment in a slum area in North Philadelphia to go to work. Braving rain and bitter cold, she noticed a silver and white Cadillac Coupe de Ville drive slowly past her and stop. She moved closer as the driver's window slid down and a bearded man asked her if she wanted a ride. He looked okay to her, and she got into the car. The man introduced himself as Gary and told her he had to make a stop. Josephina agreed, and shortly after they pulled into a nearby McDonald's. She followed him as he went inside and bought coffee and sat with him as he drank it. With a quick appraisal born of experience, Josephina studied her new companion. He was white, his face framed by a neatly trimmed beard below cold, blue, penetrating eyes. Although he wore an expensive watch and jewelry and drove a luxury car, she noticed that his clothes were cheap and soiled. Grasping for things to say, she again asked him his name. Gary Heidnik, he said sullenly. Several minutes later, he finished his coffee and told her that they were leaving. When she asked where they were going, he told her they were going to his house. They drove to a dilapidated house in a seedy neighborhood. Josephina couldn't help but notice another car parked in front of them. It was a 1971 Rolls-Royce. He clearly had some money. When they reached the door, Heidnik pulled out a strange key and pushed it into the lock. When Josephina remarked about it, he explained that he had the key cut into two pieces, half of which stayed in the lock, preventing anyone but him from entering. The door opened into a kitchen, which was decorated with pennies that had been glued to half of its walls. Heidnik led her into a living room with sparse, aging furniture. He offered to show her around and led her up a narrow staircase. As she reached the door of his bedroom, she couldn't believe her eyes. The hallway directly in front of it had been partially covered with $1 and $5 bills. Suddenly, Heidnik stopped behind her and began choking her with his hands. He released his grip, but instead of letting her go, he pulled her arms behind her and handcuffed her wrists. He then led her to a cold, damp basement room. Heidnik dragged her to a dirty mattress, attached metal clamps to her ankles, and connected them to one end of a chain. He then applied glue to the clamps and dried them with a hairdryer. The other end he fastened around a large pipe that was attached to the ceiling. When he'd finished, he told her to sit up and promptly laid his head in her lap and went to sleep. When Josefina awoke, there was enough daylight to see the small room that was her prison. In the center of the room, a small area of concrete had been removed.
I don't know what's
and a
going
shallow
on,
pit
but every time I
into the
type
ground.
something in DLive, it shows up for a minute, then it disappears.
Set to work
So I don't know if
to
it's
widen
sticking in the
and
chat or
deepen the
not.
hole. As she watched him working, he told her that all he had ever wanted was a large family, and to that end had already fathered 4 children to 4 separate women, but had lost contact with them for various reasons. He told Josefina that his plan was to get 10 women and make them all pregnant so he could raise his family. Then, to demonstrate his intent, he raped her. Left alone a second time, Josefina loosened one of the ankle clamps and, after prying the covers from the window, stretched the chain to its full length and lifted herself halfway out of the window. Unable to escape fully, she screamed, hoping that a neighbor would come to her aid. Unfortunately, only Heidnik responded to her cries. He pulled her back inside the basement and beat her with a stick until she quieted down. Then, pushing her down into the tiny hole in the floor, he forced her head onto her chest and covered her with a piece of plywood and stacked heavy weights on top of it. To make sure that her screams didn't attract any outside attention, he set up a radio and tuned it to a hard rock station at
Yeah, I think you're right,
maximum
Kitty.
volume.
'Cause I mean, I'm looking on the...
As she
I'm on the
lay
iPad right now,
cramped
on
up
4D
to the
Live.
freezing earth, Josefina struggled to breathe and waited to die. From the confines of the pit, even though the radio was still on, Josefina clearly heard a woman complaining and the sounds of a chain dragging across the floor. A short time later, Rivera's heart leapt as the board was lifted and Heidnik dragged her from the pit. Josefina looked up and saw another young black woman, naked except for a blouse, chained to the pipe in the ceiling in the same manner as she had been the first night. She stared at the woman, who seemed to be completely oblivious as to what was happening to her. Heidnik later introduced the girl as Sandy Lindsay before leaving them alone. As Sandy spoke to Josefina, she began to understand why the new arrival seemed so detached. She was retarded. Sandy told Josefina that she had been a friend of Heidnik's for several years since they had met at the Elwyn Institute, which was a local hospital for the mentally and physically handicapped. She described Gary as a good friend who always looked after her. In a voice devoid of emotion, she described how she often had sex with Gary and his friend Tony. Later, she became pregnant but had an abortion. When Heidnik learned what she had done, he flew into a rage and offered her $1,000 to have his baby. When she refused, Heidnik took her prisoner and brought her to the house. As she finished her story, Sandy dissolved into tears as she began to realize her predicament. One day, Heidnik told Sandy that her sister and 2 cousins had come looking for her, but had gone away, assuming no one was home. He later forced Sandy to write a note to her mother, telling her that she had gone away and would call later. He told the woman that he would post the letter from New York so her mother would think Sandy had run away. Although Sandy didn't seem to understand the implication of the note, the streetwise Josefina understood that Heidnik intended to keep them prisoner indefinitely. As the days dragged into weeks,
That's
Heidnik's
mentally
behavior
challenged,
became
sir.
increasingly bizarre. He fed them sporadically and kept them semi-naked so he could indulge his sexual appetite when he felt like it, which was often. When he was absent, they huddled together for warmth and waited in fear for his return. On occasion, they tried calling for help, which resulted in savage beatings, which in turn caused them to cry even louder. Any deviation from his rules was punished by further beatings or a period of incarceration in the dreaded hole. Another form of punishment he devised was to attach the girls to an overhead beam by one arm and leave them suspended for hours on end. While Heidnik was developing his skills as a torturer, Sandra's mother was actively searching for her. The mother told an officer that she believed her daughter was being held against her will by a man she knew only as Gary, who lived at 3520 North Marshall Street. She gave the officer all the information she had, including a phone number, but was unable to furnish a last name.
Yes, Daryl, exactly.
The officer tried calling the number and even went to the house, but got no response and eventually dropped the inquiry. Around Christmas, Gary Heidnik cruised the streets looking for another woman. As he turned into Lehigh Street, he found her. 19-year-old Lisa was on her way to a girlfriend's house when Heidnik pulled up beside her in the Cadillac. He leaned out of the window and made a suggestive comment, but she became angry and told him she wasn't a prostitute. He quickly apologized and offered her a ride instead. Mollified by the change in his demeanor and his impressive car, she accepted. He lured the young woman to his home by buying her a meal and some clothes and offering to take her to Atlantic City. Then he drugged Lisa with some wine, and when she passed out, he raped her, handcuffed her, and took her to the basement with his other slaves. Now there were 3 young women of the 10 that Heidnik planned to abduct. As they talked about their situation, they wondered how 7 more women would ever be able to live in the small basement, let alone any children they might eventually have. Their only hope was that one of them, or a future victim, might be able to escape and get to the police. 10 days later, Heidnik returned from one of his trips with another woman named Deborah Dudley, who, at 23, was not about to allow Heidnik to control her without a fight. From the time he had claimed her with the others, she began to question his authority at every opportunity, which generally earned her nothing more than a savage beating. Her arrival also created tension among the others, as whenever she disobeyed, Heidnik would punish them as well. Beatings became a regular event with Heidnik, often appointing one of the girls to be in charge while he was out. When he returned, he expected that person to tell him
this
if
is
the others had misbehaved.
the
If they
real
had,
Buffalo
he would order
Bill,
the girl in
I
charge
guess
to beat
based
the
off the
others accordingly.
novel, or
If
what
there
the
were no
novel
infractions
was
to report,
based from Silence
or
of
if
the
beatings
Lambs.
weren't severe enough, he would beat them all. During this time, the worldly Josefina began to win his confidence by displaying a level of loyalty and obedience that convinced Heidnik that she actually enjoyed being one of his wives. His sexual appetite also changed with the arrival of Deborah, when, apart from having intercourse with all of them on a daily basis, he would often force them to have sex with each other while he watched. While personal hygiene did not seem to be a priority for Heidnik, he later provided a portable toilet for his captives and baby wipes to wash their bodies. Sometime later, he allowed the girls to have a bath, after which he would force them to have sex. The amount and type of food that he provided seemed to change according to his mood. Some days he would give the girls only bread and water. The following day it would be stale hot dogs or peanut butter sandwich. He finally solved the problem by giving the girls canned dog food and beating them until they ate it. On January 18th, Heidnik went out again and returned with another girl. He had picked up a tiny 18-year-old named Jacqueline on the north side of the city and brought her back to the house. As before, he whipped her and dragged her to the basement, but when it came time for the chaining, he found that the shackles were too big for her tiny ankles and used handcuffs instead. Later that day, he bought everyone Chinese food and, as an added surprise, a bottle of champagne. The occasion was the 26th birthday of the woman that was fast becoming his favorite, Josefina. Josefina would later reveal that Heidnik was in good spirits because he had the idea that she and Sandra Lindsay had become pregnant by him, when this was not the case. In early February 1987, Heidnik found reason to punish Sandra Lindsay when he caught her trying to move the plywood that covered the pit. The punishment was severe. She was forced to hang from a roof beam by a single handcuff attached to her wrist for several days. During this time, her condition deteriorated and she refused to eat. Still believing her to be pregnant, Heidnik tried to force feed her pieces of bread. Towards the end of the week, even though she was vomiting and running a high fever, Heidnik continued to force feed her, often jamming food into her mouth and holding her mouth shut until she swallowed. The next day, she lost consciousness. When Heidnik couldn't rouse her, he became angry and unlocked the handcuffs, dropping her to the ground. He told the others that she was faking and kicked her into the pit and left her there while he served up ice cream for everybody and left. When he returned, he lifted Lindsay out of the pit and checked her pulse. She was dead. After telling the girls that she had probably choked, he carried Sandra's body upstairs. A short time later, they shuddered with horror when they heard the unmistakable whine of a power saw. Their horror later turned to revulsion when one of Heidnik's dogs walked into the basement carrying a long, meaty bone and proceeded to devour it in front of the terrified girls. Investigators would later reveal that Heidnik had ground up Lindsay's flesh using a food processor and fed it to his dogs and the captives mixed with dog food. To dispose of the remaining parts of the body, he cooked them on the stove. In the days following Sandra's death, the girls began to notice a sickening stench that filled the entire house. Eventually, it would become so bad that Heidnik's neighbors complained to the police. After several such calls, a patrolman was sent to the house to make inquiries, but left after Heidnik assured him that the smell was caused by an overcooked roast dinner. Following Sandra's death, Heidnik's behavior...
Yeah, someone's starving that much and they're dehydrated, you're gonna feed them bread and that bread's gonna get stuck in there because there's no more fucking saliva, they're gonna choke.
During this period, the girls devised a plan to attack Heidnik and escape, but the plan never came to fruition. Jacqueline would later testify that the attack never occurred because Josefina told Heidnik what they were planning. Convinced that the girls were constantly plotting against him, Heidnik devised a plan of his own to prevent them from leaving. After cuffing each girl's hand and foot, he hung them from a beam and gagged them. Then, taking several different sizes of screwdrivers, he gouged inside their ears in an attempt to deafen them. He believed that if they could not hear, they'd be unable to hear him coming. The only one he didn't touch was Josefina. Later, when Deborah Dudley began to cause trouble, he unchained her and took her upstairs. When they returned, Deborah was unusually quiet and solemn. After Heidnik had left, the others asked her what had happened. Stammering with fear, she told them that Heidnik had taken her into the kitchen and showed her a pot that he had on the stove. Inside it was Sandra Lindsay's head. He then opened the oven and showed her part of Sandra's ribcage that he was roasting. Opening the fridge, he pointed to an arm and other body parts that he had wrapped in plastic and told her that if she didn't start obeying him, she would be next. Within a few days, Deborah had recovered her composure and continued to defy Heidnik's attempts to tame her. As an added incentive to obey, Heidnik added a new punishment to his already cruel bag of tricks, his own version of electric shock treatment. His method was simple. He stripped the insulation from one end of an electrical extension cord and plugged the other into a socket. Then, turning on the power, he would hold the bare wires against each of the girls' chains and watch with detached amusement as they wriggled and danced to escape the current. As before, Josefina was exempt from punishment. As the weeks passed, Heidnik began to treat Josefina as more of a partner than a captive and spent more and more time with her alone. So much so that, on March 18th, when Heidnik decided to punish the others, he enlisted Josefina to help him. The shock treatment was again employed with one added feature: water. After drilling air holes in the plywood cover, Heidnik ordered Josefina to fill the pit with water. The three other women, still in chains, were then pushed down into it before the cover was replaced and weighted down with bags of dirt. As they sat shivering with cold and fear, the bare wire was pushed through one of the holes until it briefly touched one of the chains, sending a jolt of electricity surging through all of them. The wire was then pushed into the hole a second time, making direct contact with Deborah's chain. Absorbing most of the voltage, Deborah screamed and shuddered uncontrollably before collapsing face down in the water. Seeing their friend fall, Jacqueline and Lisa screamed until Heidnik removed the cover and dragged Deborah out. After ascertaining that she was dead, Heidnik calmly made sandwiches and told the women, "Aren't you glad it wasn't one of you?" He then left for a few minutes and returned with a pen and paper. Handing it to Josefina, he ordered her to write the time and date at the top of the page. When she had done so, he made her write a statement detailing how she had assisted him to electrocute Deborah. He then ordered her to sign it before adding his own signature. Holding up the letter, he then told her, "If you ever go to the cops, I can use this as evidence that you killed Debbie." Satisfied that he had her completely under his control, he removed Josefina's chains and told her to go upstairs and change. It was the first time she had been completely dressed in 4 months. The following day, Heidnik returned to the basement and, after wrapping Deborah's body in plastic, placed it in the freezer and left. Following Deborah Dudley's death, Josefina became Heidnik's constant companion, often accompanying him on outings to restaurants and on shopping expeditions. On one such outing, Heidnik told Josefina that if he was ever caught, he would act as though he was insane, as he knew how to manipulate the testing procedures. He told her that he had been fooling the authorities for years so that he could qualify for disability payments. Heidnik also seemed to soften after Deborah died and began to provide additional comforts for his captives, including mattresses, blankets, pillows, and even a television set, while Josefina, in her role as trusted confidant, earned the dubious honor of sharing Heidnik's bed. On one particular trip, they were driving in the countryside outside of New Jersey when Heidnik stopped the car near a heavily wooded area and remarked that it would be a good place to hide Deborah's body. The following night, March 22nd, Heidnik and Josephina loaded Deborah's partially frozen body in one of his other vehicles, a Dodge van, and drove back to the area known as the Pine Barrens. While Josephina waited in the vehicle, Heidnik dumped the body in a grove of trees. The next day, Heidnik told her that he would need to find a replacement for Deborah and suggested that they go out cruising together to find one. Later that night, the pair drove through the streets looking for
This guy's a
likely
real
suspect.
fucking piece
Heidnik
of
found a new victim,
shit.
Agnes, who he convinced to go home with them. Shortly after getting to the house, Agnes found herself stripped, chained, and imprisoned in the basement with the others. To Heidnik, Josephina may have seemed like a willing participant, but she had other plans and was happy to wait for the right time to implement them. Her chance finally came on March 24th, when after days of pleading and cajoling, she convinced Heidnik that if he let her go to see her family, she would bring back a new wife for his collection. Heidnik, anxious to expand his family, agreed on the condition that after visiting her family, she would pick up the woman and meet him at a gas station near her house at midnight. Later that evening, Heidnik dropped her near her house and drove off. Within seconds, Josephina was sprinting toward the apartment that she shared with her boyfriend, Vincent Nelson. When Nelson answered the door, Josephina blurted out her incredible story. As she related how she had been taken prisoner, sexually abused, and tortured, Nelson wondered if she had lost her mind. As he tried to quiet her down, she continued to describe scenes involving death, dog food, and body parts, until Nelson offered to go to Hendrik's house and confront him. Scared that the interference would lead to the other girls being killed, Josephina convinced him to call the police. Several minutes later, 2 police officers, John Cannon and David Savage, arrived. Again, Josephina told her incredible story. Like Nelson, Cannon and Savage also found it hard to believe until Josephina lifted the bottoms of her jeans and showed them the scars on her ankles where the chains had been. They were convinced and went to the gas station where Heidnik was waiting in his Cadillac. As they took out their weapons and approached the car, Heidnik raised his hands and asked if they were there regarding child support payments. He was told that it was a far more serious matter and placed under arrest. After 4 months of unspeakable horror, Gary Heidnik's reign of terror was finally at an end. Just before 5 a.m. on March 25, 1987, a squad of police under the direction of Homicide Lieutenant James Hansen arrived at 3520 North Marshall Street. Unable to gain access via Heidnik's intricate lock system, Hansen gave the order to break the door down. One of the first officers through the door was David Savage, one of the men who had arrested Gary Heidnik. Following Josephina's direction, he and his partner, Officer McCloskey, went straight to the basement. When Savage entered the small
I haven't
room,
watched
he
this,
saw
so this is
two
my
women
first
sleeping
time. I
on
don't
a
know
mattress in the middle of the
if he's
room.
got, the
Despite the
Minecraft
cold
penalty or
conditions,
not.
Their only covering
I
was
hope.
a thin, dirty blanket. As he approached them, they woke and screamed until Savage assured them that he was a police officer who had come to release them. He noticed that the women were chained to a pipe in the ceiling and wore nothing except thin blouses and socks. When one of the officers asked if there were any more women in the house, they pointed to a sheet of plywood on the floor that had plastic bags filled with soil piled on top of it. Pushing aside the bags and the board, McCloskey saw the nude figure of Agnes squatting in the bottom of the pit. After lifting Agnes out, the police removed the women's chains and took them upstairs to a waiting ambulance. With the women freed, the police turned their attention to the search. In the kitchen, Savage found an aluminum pot on the stove, which was badly scorched and contained a yellowish, fatty substance. On the kitchen counter was an industrial food processor which had been recently used, possibly for raw meat. Inside the stove, he found an oven dish containing a charred piece of bone that resembled a human rib. Up to that point, Savage was still struggling to believe what had really occurred in the room. But when he opened the fridge, what he found removed all doubt. Lying on a shelf in the freezer compartment was a human forearm. Over several days, police searched the house and yards, detailing every piece of paper and material they found. They excavated the front and backyards but did not find any further human remains. In the house, they found a closet full of pornographic magazines, all of which featured black women. Although the house and surrounds gave the impression that the owner had been a disturbed person existing only on a veteran's pension, they later discovered that Gary Heidnik was in fact a rich man, having amassed an amazing $550,000 in a Merrill Lynch investment account. While the search was continuing, Heidnik was being questioned in custody as police attempted to unravel the life and crimes of the scruffy individual the press was already calling a vicious madman. Life started for Gary Michael Heidnik in November 1943 in Eastlake, a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. 18 months later, Gary's brother Terry was born. 6 months later, their parents, Michael and Ellen, divorced, and the boys went to live with their mother and her new husband until Gary started school, after which they went to live with their father and his new wife. These were not happy times for the boys, as they spent most of their time arguing with their stepmother or being heavily disciplined by their father. Heidnik would later tell psychologists that his father had continually ridiculed him, especially when he wet his bed, which was often. At these times, his father would hang the stained sheet out a second-story window in full view of the neighbors. Gary was also ridiculed at school after a fall from a tree left him with a misshapen head. His brother Terry believes the accident was the root cause of Gary's erratic behavior. A curious comment indeed, considering Terry himself spent much of his life in mental institutions. By the time Gary had reached the 8th grade, he had developed two main obsessions: making money and becoming an army officer. So intense was the latter ambition that his father made arrangements for him to attend the prestigious Staunton Military Academy in Virginia. Gary lasted at the academy for 2 years, attaining excellent grades, but left suddenly in his junior year and returned home to live with his father. Within the next year, he tried 2 different high schools, but soon became bored and left after a few weeks. Finally, at age 18, he joined the regular army. Heidnik later told prison psychologists that he left Staunton after visiting a psychologist, but failed to indicate why he had felt he needed one or give details of his treatment. Heidnik adapted readily to army life, but made few friends. During his training, he was graded as excellent. Following basic training, he applied for several specialist training positions, including the military police, but was refused. Finally, he was sent to San Antonio, Texas to be trained as a medic. Again, he did well and also developed a thriving business by lending money to other soldiers and charging interest on the loans. Unfortunately for him, this enterprise came to a swift end when he was transferred to a field hospital in West Virginia. Within weeks of his new posting, Heidnik sat for a high school equivalency diploma, scoring 96%. Things seemed to be going well for him until late August 1962, when he went to the sickbay complaining of dizziness, blurred vision, and nausea. A neurologist later determined that Heidnik was suffering from gastroenteritis and also displayed the symptoms of a mental illness. Dr. Jack Apshe, a noted Philadelphia psychologist, later investigated Heidnik's history of mental illness and found that although the Army had not indicated if they considered him schizoid or schizophrenic, they had prescribed a heavy tranquilizer normally reserved for the treatment of serious psychotics or patients that experience hallucinations. Within weeks, Heidnik was sent back to the States. 3 months later, he was given an honorable discharge and released from the Army on medical grounds and given a 100% disability pension. The official diagnosis was schizoid personality disorder. He had served only 14 months. After leaving the Army, he settled in Philadelphia and qualified as a licensed practical nurse and was issued with a state certificate. He later enrolled in the University of Pennsylvania and gained credits in a variety of subjects, including anthropology, history, chemistry, and biology. Eventually, with his nursing qualifications, he was able to get a job at the university hospital, but was later fired when the standard of his work declined. From there, he enrolled at the Veterans Administration Hospital near Philadelphia to be trained as a psychiatric nurse, but was asked to leave because of his bad attitude. From then on, Heidnik's life began to decline as he spent more and more time in mental institutions. In 1970, his mother Ellen took her own life by swallowing poison, which only served to exacerbate his already fragile state of mind. He would often spend long periods refusing to communicate, which almost bordered on catatonia. In one of his more lucid moments, he was given a series of intelligence tests, which indicated that he was of superior intellect. On one occasion, he was admitted to a mental ward after he attacked his brother Terry with a wood plane. When he later visited while Terry was recuperating, he told Terry that if he had died from his wounds, he would have soaked his remains in a bathtub full of acid to dispose of his body. With each admission to the hospital, his behavior became more bizarre. He spent most days completely mute, only communicating by writing notes. He constantly wore a leather jacket, which he refused to take off. His personal hygiene was almost non-existent, and he developed a series of mannerisms, such as saluting and rolling up one pants leg when he didn't wish to be disturbed. In 1971, while on a trip to California, Heidnik had the startling revelation that he should form his own church. Returning to Philadelphia, he registered the United Church of the Ministers of God and installed himself as Bishop Heidnik. At that time, the church had just 5 members, which included Terry Heidnik and Gary's retarded girlfriend. In 1975, Heidnik opened a Merrill Lynch account in the church's name. Over the next 12 years, due in no small part to his childhood interest in all things financial, he succeeded in parlaying his $1,500 investment into $545,000. During these times, he was in and out of mental hospitals or ministering to his parishioners, which were few. As well as being a regular at mental hospitals, Heidnik had also become well known to the police. In 1976, he was charged with aggravated assault and carrying an unlicensed pistol. The charges were laid after Heidnik had fired a shot at a man who rented a house from him, grazing his face. The house was later sold, and while the new owners were in the process of cleaning it, they found boxes of pornographic magazines and a hole dug in the concrete floor of the basement. 18 months later, he came to the attention of the police when he signed his retarded girlfriend's sister out of a mental institution on day leave and kept her prisoner in his apartment. The sister, also seriously retarded, was later recovered from a locked storage room in Heidnik's basement and returned to the home. On a return to the hospital, she was examined and found to have been sodomized and infected with gonorrhea. Heidnik was later arrested and charged with kidnapping, unlawful restraint, false imprisonment, involuntary deviate sexual intercourse, and interfering with the custody of a committed person. When the case went to trial in November 1978, Heidnik pleaded not guilty and took the stand in his own defense, claiming that he was innocent. After ordering a psychological examination, which found that Heidnik was manipulative and psychosexually immature, he was found guilty and sentenced to 3 to 7 years in jail. A later appeal overturned the original sentence, which resulted in him spending almost 3 years of his incarceration in various mental institutions. He was finally released on April 12, 1983, on the condition that he remain under the supervision of a state-sanctioned mental health program. As in so many similar cases, if the state had realized the true state of Heidnik's mind, they would never have released him. Prior to his imprisonment, Heidnik had carried on several relationships with women. He seemed to prefer black women, some of them retarded. During these relationships, his focus seemed to be on fathering children. His first partner bore him a daughter, but left shortly after, taking the baby with her. The next was a woman named Dorothy, who was seriously retarded. According to neighbors, Heidnik treated Dorothy badly, often beating her, locking her up, and refusing to feed her. Dorothy eventually wandered off and was later found living on the street in a dazed condition. The next woman Heidnik selected was Anne Jeanette, the sister of the girl that Heidnik was convicted of. She was also retarded. When Heidnik returned from prison, Anne Jeanette was gone. A later police investigation failed to find any trace of her, leaving police with the impression that Heidnik was responsible for her disappearance. For his next partner, Heidnik enlisted the aid of a
I disavow that word. But I like it a lot. God.
Virgin. A few weeks later, he was corresponding by mail with a young Filipino woman named Betty. For 2 years, she and Heidnik communicated by mail and the occasional phone call. Eventually, Heidnik proposed marriage, telling Betty that he was a minister. Betty accepted and traveled to Philadelphia in September 1985. After greeting her at the airport, Heidnik took her home to the North Marshall Street house and showed her to her room. She was shocked to find a retarded woman sleeping in the bed that she was to occupy. Heidnik told the woman she was a paying tenant. Despite Betty's misgivings about Heidnik and the living arrangements, she married him on October 3rd in Maryland. For the first week, Heidnik treated her well and spoke of starting a family. A week later, she returned from a shopping trip to find Heidnik in bed, having sex with 3 women. Horrified, she demanded that he pay to send her back home. He refused, telling her that he was the boss and having multiple sex partners was normal for him. From that time on, Heidnik was never without additional women in the house and often made Betty watch while he had sex with them. On the occasions that she complained, he would beat her and order her to cook for him and his partners at the time. As the days progressed, he became increasingly violent and constantly warned Betty that if she left, he would find her and kill her. One day in 1986 was the last straw for Betty. After she complained about the women he was bringing home, Heidnik beat her, whipped her, and then threatened to kill her. Because she only knew Heidnik and his friends, Betty was forced to turn to other members of the Filipino community for help. They convinced her that she should leave him, so 4 days later, after pretending to go out shopping, she left and never went back. 2 weeks later, Heidnik was picked up and charged with assault, indecent assault, spousal rape, and involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. Luckily for Heidnik, the parole period for his previous sexual offenses expired the day before his arrest. His luck continued to hold when the charges were later dismissed when Betty failed to appear for the preliminary hearing. In 1987, Betty dragged Heidnik into court in an attempt to win financial support for her son, which had been conceived, unknown to Heidnik, from one of his encounters with Betty. During the case, the judge became aware of Heidnik's medical history and ordered him to undergo a series of tests to determine his mental competency. By the time the tests were conducted, 2 of the girls he held captive in his basement baby factory had already died. On April 23, 1987, Heidnik appeared in court for the first time since his arrest. Beside him sat his counsel, Charles Chuck Perudo. Heidnik had selected Perudo, an experienced, sharp-minded defense attorney based on his reputation for defending sensational cases. The reason for the appearance was to officially determine if the prosecution had the probable cause to hold Gary Heidnik for the crimes he had been charged with. For Assistant District Attorney Charles Gallagher, the preliminary hearing was a mere formality as he presented the state's case against Gary Heidnik. Heidnik stood charged with murder, kidnapping, aggravated assault, involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, indecent exposure, false imprisonment, unlawful restraint, simple assault, indecent assault, and other associated offenses. The most damning evidence against Heidnik was the testimony of the captives themselves. The first to be called was Lisa, who described in minute detail how Gary Heidnik had chained, beaten, and whipped her. Next to give evidence was Josephina. In a clear and confident voice, she related her story from the time she was picked up in Heidnik's Cadillac until the time she was released. She was particularly graphic in her description of Sandra Lindsay's death and the electrocution murder of Deborah Dudley, particularly when she admitted that it had been she who had pushed the power cord into the pit. Perudo later cross-examined Josephina and accused her of instigating many of the beatings and the electrocution of Dudley. When Lisa was cross-examined, she too accused Josephina of being Heidnik's willing partner in his acts of death and depravity. However, her evidence was refuted when Jacqueline took the stand and told the court that Josephina only did Heidnik's bidding when she was under threat of death or punishment. The proceedings ended with Dr. Paul Hoyer of the County Medical Examiner's Office giving evidence regarding the body parts and other human remains found in Heidnik's kitchen. In a hushed courtroom, Dr. Hoyer read out the items found like a gruesome shopping list: 2 forearms, 1 upper arm, 2 knees, and 2 segments of thigh, all cut with a saw, the tissue, muscle, and skin still attached. In all, 24 pounds of human remains were found carefully wrapped and stored in Gary Heidnik's refrigerator. Gary Heidnik was indicted and held for trial. The trial began on June 20th, 1988, in front of a packed courtroom. From the outset, as Charles Gallagher outlined the prosecution's case in all its gory detail, Chuck Perudo knew what his defense was going to be. He was going to plead his client guilty on all charges, but was going to try and prove that Gary Heidnik was certifiably insane. If the prosecution's case had been strong at the pretrial hearing, at the trial itself it seemed even stronger. With both sides' opening statements having taken only a few minutes, Charles Gallagher began calling his witnesses to the stand. For 2 days, the jury of 6 whites and 6 blacks heard testimony from the captives themselves, their families, the police, and the medical examiners. As the judge excused the last of the prosecution's witnesses, Chuck Perudo requested that the charge of first-degree murder be removed on the grounds that intent to kill had not been proven. Judge Lynn Abraham's reply was one that Peruto would become familiar with during the trial: overruled. Chuck Peruto's defense was centered around two men, Heidnick's psychiatrist Dr. Clancy McKenzie and psychologist Jack Apschi. Unfortunately for Peruto and Heidnick, when he called his first witness to the stand, he found that McKenzie had his own agenda. McKenzie, who had spent a total of 100 hours with Heidnick, refused to answer direct questions, preferring instead to launch into an intellectual discussion on schizophrenia and other associated mental conditions, which at times completely confused the jury. Eventually, Peruto managed to direct McKenzie to give his opinion on the most important aspect of an insanity defense. At the time of the offenses, did Gary Heidnick know the difference between right and wrong? McKenzie responded that Heidnick did not know the difference. Peruto then asked the judge to instruct the jury to consider the possibility that Josephina was actually an accomplice of Gary Heidnick's. Judge Abraham answered that she would be prepared to do so as long as he understood that it would indicate to the jury that if Heidnick was capable of enlisting the aid of an accomplice, then he was clearly not insane. Wisely, Peruto decided not to pursue the point. The following day, the defense case received another setback when Judge Abraham refused to admit most of Jack Apschi's testimony on Heidnick's mental history, ruling it inadmissible. Peruto was caught completely off guard by the ruling, as most of his insanity defense was based on the testimonies of Apschi and McKenzie. But in a short time, McKenzie had undermined his own credibility, and Apschi was not allowed to table the results of weeks of painstaking research into Heidnick's medical history, the details of which Peruto believed would prove that his client had been insane for most of his adult life. Peruto then played his final card by calling Dr. Kenneth Kuhl, another psychiatrist. Kuhl was able to give part of his professional opinion regarding Heidnick's sanity, but in a closed session. Abraham ruled that his testimony was confusing the jury and ruled that most of it be stricken. Kuhl also had his testimony damaged in cross-examination when he admitted that he had only spent 20 minutes with Heidnick and had left in frustration when Heidnick refused to talk to him. When Gallagher asked what he had based his analysis on, he admitted that he had relied on Heidnick's previous medical history. As a parting shot at the already damaged defense case, Gallagher called an additional witness, Robert Kirkpatrick, Heidnick's broker at Merrill Lynch. Kirkpatrick gave evidence that the Gary Heidnick he knew was an astute investor who knew exactly what he was doing. For the next few days, Peruto and Gallagher called additional witnesses to prove and disprove each other's arguments until there were no more witnesses to call, and they began their final summations. The following day was taken up with Judge Abraham instructing the jury on the technicalities of the various degrees of murder and other legalities to help them reach a verdict. On Friday, June 30th, 1988, after 16 hours of deliberation over 2.5 days, the jury was ready. As Betty Ann Bennett, the jury foreperson, stood to read their verdict, Chuck Peruto was confident that his client would be found guilty of the lesser charge of second-degree murder and thereby escape the death penalty. His hopes were dashed, however, when Bennett began reading the verdict. For the murder of Deborah Dudley, guilty in the first degree. For the murder of Sandra Lindsay, guilty in the first degree. And so the list went on. By the time Bennett had finished, Heidnick stood convicted on 18 charges: 2 counts of first-degree murder, 5 counts of rape, 6 counts of kidnapping, 4 counts of aggravated assault, and 1 count of involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. With the verdicts announced, Judge Abraham retired the jury until 9 a.m. the following day, when the prosecution and defense attorneys would have the chance to address the jury before the sentence was decided. By 12:15 p.m. the next day, the jury had made a unanimous decision. Gary Heidnick should be sentenced to death for the murders of Deborah Dudley and Sandra Lindsay. Just as he had throughout the trial, Heidnick showed no sign of emotion when the sentence was read. To this day, Jacqueline, Agnes, and Lisa have various levels of hearing impairment, thanks to the damage Heidnick did with his screwdrivers. Together with Josephina, they instituted civil proceedings to gain access to the funds in Heidnick's Merrill Lynch account and divide them equally between them as criminal compensation. Other parties as diverse as the Peace Corps and the IRS have also filed for access to the funds. For 11 long years, Gary Heidnick waited in jail until the normal legal hyperbole that inevitably follows a death sentence had diminished. Finally, on July 6, 1999, at 10:29 p.m., Gary Michael Heidnick was executed by lethal injection. After his death, no member of his family had made arrangements to claim his body.
Wow. This motherfucker got away with so much shit. Had money, was traveling, got away with, you know, I don't know. I mean, the first time, what was it? They caught like fucking 8 pounds of like human flesh of just fat that was like wasn't burnt away, and then what, an arm in his fucking fridge with other shit, dude. I mean, just the victims alone that they found in his fucking basement, man. Although it's funny because the movie is nothing like the fucking real deal, obviously, but whatever. Let me open the chest, and I'm gonna end the song with IT's hit White Boy Summer. Give me a minute, hold on. Let me open the chest real quick. Actually, hold on. Sunday show. Where is it? Here we go. Hold on, let me open the chest first. God damn, man. So yeah, I guess DLive, every time I type something in there, it just disappears, but it works on Twitch and YouTube. Of course, DLive's not working. Why would it? Oh, anyway, chest. I did it. All right, cool. All right, my little lamb chops. Thank you for joining me. I will be back next Sunday for Serial Sunday. Your lovely host, Leo Von Puzel. Thank you, Daryl and Kitty Bean, Wet Sandwich and Sal, for joining me. Hope you guys are having a lovely Sunday. Let me get this kind of organized. Yeah, so I've been just trying out Streamlabs. It's working a lot better than the original OBS, but I gotta learn how to work the just balance out the audio better and filters and shit like that for the mic, maybe even for the camera. So, but anyway, guys, thank you for joining me. And I do believe there is a Sunday night shit show tonight, 7 p.m. my time, Los Angeles time, and 10 o'clock East Coast time, New York time. So, I will be in the chat. See you guys later. And White Boy Summer.
Gonna find a place where everybody looks like me. White people as far as the eye can see. It's the white boy summer, it's total supremacy. Going down to the beach, you know we gotta catch a wave. Gonna find some white girls, then we're gonna procreate. The white boy summer gonna fix that low birth rate. Gonna hit the road in the Clans mobile, fresh with a coat of white paint. We can't be late for the secret rally, so we're flying down the road at 1488. White boy summer, only certain people allowed. One big homogeneous sea when I look in the crowd. White boy summer, sorry if you're kinda brown. Gonna find a place where everybody looks like me. White people as far as the eye can see. It's the white boy summer, it sounded okay to me.